Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Centimetre Perfect AFL podcast. We have made it through 16 rounds of the 2025 season, 16 and 3/4 if you count opening round. We've also made it to the end of the financial year. If that's something that means something to you, congratulations. Liam, how are you? End of financial year means performance reviews, which we'll talk about in a second. How are you going? How's your performance review of that round?
My performance review of that round was predictable. I think for the first time in a long time, we had a round that was probably going to end up exactly how it did. Wins to exactly who we thought. But between all the commentary arguing over if umpires' decisions are correct and them trying to think of witty puns on the fly, I think we got everything we wanted out of this round of football, Jesse, don't you?
What's insufficient intent between friends? But don't show any insufficient intent when it comes to following us over on Instagram at cmperfect_AFL. To our YouTube audience, hello, you can see us. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, turn those notifications on as well. You don't want to miss episodes coming up, including our Just the Tips preview edition, which is only released on YouTube every Wednesday. To our podcasting audience, which is Apple, Amazon, and Spotify, hello to you. Thank you once again for tuning in. A review is much appreciated if you are on one of those platforms. If you're on Spotify, you can leave a comment as well to let us know your thoughts on the episode so far.
Yeah. I think, well done, Jesse. You're a pro at that now. You're rolling through that like a champion.
Just don't add any more platforms like Roku or LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. Why not? We can put it out there to the world that way. Just put it on your resume, Jesse. Podcast host. I think you can do it. We'll roll right in. Oh, sorry, go on. What were you going to say?
I think so too, but I also think if you aren't subscribed to our YouTube, now is a great time. Some great content coming up as well, including the pilot of a new series we're looking to debut in the coming weeks. So definitely tune in to YouTube for what we hope will be an exciting new series to complement our weekly podcasting content, both during the season and also in that really boring summer where everyone has to just think of stories that aren't actually happening or complain about things. We're going to do the latter.
That is very true, Jesse. That is very true. But we've got a lot to talk about today. So the buys are done. And we've got 18 teams who have, so far, for the most part, finished 15 games. So we're doing our second trimester episode tonight, Jesse. We're doing our second trimester episode. Second trimester done. So what better thing to do at this point of the season than review and see how everyone's gone and maybe look forward to the finals, which are fast approaching, Jesse. Why is this year going so GD quickly?
Well, we've hit end of the financial year, so this is performance review season. Will these clubs get their bonus? And by bonus, I mean father-son picks. Maybe. I know one of them won't. I think it's a good time, though, to set some expectations. So we talked about in the first trimester review that we did, we talked about contenders, pretenders, and duds. And I think that really did suit the narrative of where the season was at the time. Who could win the premiership? Who might win the premiership? Who's not going to do anything? Honestly, I don't think doing it in that same format would add anything for our listeners and viewers this time around. So we've changed it up a bit, and we're doing it in that performance review framework. So we're talking about teams that have exceeded expectations so far in season 2025, teams that have met expectations so far, and also teams that are underperforming, both based on our thoughts at the start of the season, Liam, and also just the general, AFL discourse as well. So teams could still be in the 8 and not be meeting expectations. Sure. Teams could be 16th. And exceeding expectations. It just depends on how the cookie has crumbled.
That's right. So where better to start, Jesse, than at the top of the table? Let's kick off with Collingwood, currently sitting in first place. 13-2 is their record. That's pretty good. Really healthy percentage, 135.8 as well. I mean, it's hard to argue anything other than a team that's doing really well. Jesse, what are your thoughts on the Magpies?
Yeah, they're exceeding. Being top of the ladder doesn't automatically entitle you to be exceeding expectations in any given season. But Collingwood, I think, have done that. I think there were seems to be a top 4 possibility coming in by most, I think myself included, but I wouldn't have called them a lock for top 4 before a ball was kicked. And then obviously the meltdown at NG in round 0 probably didn't allay any fears that Collingwood fans may have had about, are the Stars too old? Can they keep going? Can they turn around the premiership hangover of 2024 into a productive 2025 season? But since then, they're 13-1 since that time, and the one loss was after the siren.
Yeah.
Or at least with a chance to win after the siren. So that is a phenomenal record. They easily could have gone 14-1 and thus 14 wins in a row since that round 0 loss. They have been dominant. They are clearly the top team to beat. And right now, I only realistically see two sides, if they were to get to the grand final, that I think would be in with a shot at beating them.
Yeah, they're well coached. They're a great team. And there's concerns at the start of the season. You touched on it briefly there, the age of the Magpies. I think there was a lot of talk coming into this year how old they were. But, I mean, with age comes experience, right? And I think that's really showing this year. We've got quite a few teams who are down at the younger end of the spectrum. And week on week at the moment, the Magpies are just toweling up their opposition. So it's hard to say they're not exceeding expectations because, yeah, I think I should have got all the previous things we had, what we spoke about last time to see what our comparisons were. But God, they're good, aren't they?
They are.
They're annoyingly good. Why are they so good all the time? What do you reckon moving forward, Jesse? You've said it before. So only two teams that can potentially beat them, you reckon?
Yeah, in terms of teams, I feel confident of having a shot in a grand final. Looking ahead, I mean, there's 8 games left in the season. 20 wins is more than realistic. I mean, what we've seen, they've beaten Brisbane, lost to Geelong after the siren, they've beaten Adelaide, they've beaten Hawthorn, they've beaten Fremantle, they've beaten the Dogs, I'm pretty sure. They've got a comprehensive record. I mean, they are just winning, and they've got teams they'll be happy to be playing in the back half of the season. They've got Carlton this week, they've got West Coast still to come as well. So they should just be able to hoover up results. Look, not winning 20 games wouldn't be a disaster. I don't think it matters. I think from where they are now, 10 points clear on top.
Do they have West Coast? Do they have West Coast again?
Pretty sure they do play West Coast again. No, sorry, they've just played West Coast.
Yeah.
They've just had West Coast. They'll have Carlton in their future. They've got a pretty good time of things, I would say. I think they could easily win 20 games if they're so inclined.
They are formidable. Let's move on to the second place. Brisbane Lions, currently 10-4, and that cheeky draw, 113.4 in their percentage as well. Now, I've been a bit up and down on Brisbane this year, which is hilarious when you look at a team that's second with 10 wins of the year. They're doing okay, I say. A bit funny about them, but they keep winning. Reigning premiers, Jesse, exceeding, meeting, not meeting. They're probably not in the not meeting category, I wouldn't imagine.
No, that would be, I think, excessively harsh. I'm going to go with meeting expectations for the Lions. I think they've had some real positives this season. I think the worries about them losing Joe Danaher have been somewhat allayed, but then again, they're the lowest team in the 8 for points scored. So there is still some concern, I feel. And also looking at players like Charlie Cameron, I think we've seen production drops there as well. Logan Morris has shouldered a significant load, especially in the last fortnight or so, to really bring up that goal scoring. But ultimately, guys like Hipwood, they can go in and out of games. I don't think they've got real potent support. I think losing Dan McStay to Collingwood, even at the time, was a shame for the Lions. But I think right now they would love a McStay-type operator in that forward line to just paper over some of those Danaher losses. Now, it's pretty clear they're meeting expectations for me. I don't think they're doing particularly phenomenally. I mean, we know they had that slump a couple of weeks ago where they just couldn't kick between the big sticks. That would play into why they're the lowest scoring team in the 8 at present. But I think they're pretty clearly right in that bracket for a premiership. They're one of the two sides I would say could topple Collingwood right now if we were to go into a grand final. And they had a belting grand final not 2 years ago. So another serving of that, I'd be quite content with.
Absolutely. Yeah, it'd be bit harsh for us to expect anything more than second place for the reigning premiers, but we're still like, yeah, that's probably about expected, which goes to show how good the Brisbane Lions are. Let's move on, Jesse. Team number 3. And I'm only rushing through these, Jesse, because we've got so many teams to go through.
There are so many to go through.
The Crows currently in third spot, 10-5, 139.8, very healthy percentage there. A little bit of a surprise packet in a little bit of in a way, Jesse, would you say?
I would say they're exceeding expectations as well. We talked about scoring with Brisbane. Adelaide are the second highest across the comp for points for at the moment. Their forward line with Fogarty, Thilthorpe and Tex is
formidable.
It's an issue for any side. There's 17 teams they have to play. All 17 teams are going to have some variety of issue with that Adelaide team. Now, whether it's a matter of how reliable they can be across the board. Defensively, that's probably gone under the radar for them. They're also second lowest for points against in the competition too. So they're doing it well at both ends. It's just now a matter of whether they can, across 3 hours in a prelim final or even potentially in a grand final, if they can go with a Collingwood or a Geelong or a Brisbane for that 3 hours. And when you talk about those three teams, you're talking teams with, two of them have got grand final experience in the last 24 months. The other one won a premiership the year before that and always seemed to retain players through their fountain of youth. So that's probably the one knock for Adelaide. That's why I haven't put them as one of my two teams I think could knock off Collingwood. Not to say they can't, but I'd be more confident about the other two at this stage. But clearly exceeding expectations from where they were coming into round zero.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to mention the fact that that finals experience is going to come into play for sure, because it seems like there are the stalwarts around them that are there all the time. And here come these uppity Crows jumping on the bandwagon. I'm happy to see it. I like seeing the Crows do well. I like seeing teams who haven't been in and around the finals picture for some time excelling. And, I think the Crows can go quite far. Do you reckon top 4 for them, Jesse?
I'm going to say no.
Ooh, okay.
I think the best they're going to do is 4th.
Okay.
So it could happen. I just get the sense that 5th right now, who will come to, potentially have a better draw and also might be a slightly better list pound for pound.
Fair enough. And look, and the Crows are the first of a few teams on the old 10-5 record. Let's move on to the next one, who are the Cats, currently in 4th, 10-5, 127.5. Are they there and abouts again, aren't they, Jesse?
I toss this one up. I'm going with Meats. There'll be some that say that's harsh and they're exceeding, and I do acknowledge that. I think to a degree that is true, but I've also got to consider the fact that I was pretty strong on Geelong coming into this season, and I wasn't ready to drop them off as maybe others were or had been considered. They're an elite side. That's not a shot at you, Liam. It was a pretty general consensus.
Yeah, I know.
I've gotten it wrong about some other clubs that we can come to, but Geelong was one that so far I've been okay with in terms of where I thought they would be. They just do it well at both ends. They've got a coach that is chronically underappreciated because he was, quote, handed the list by Bomber Thompson on the way out. But, Chris Scott can adapt to anything. I think if this game was played in Antarctica with polar bears at both ends of the ground, I think they'd be fine. I think they'd find a way around that. I think Shannon Neal would be in a wrestling match with one of them. And I know they're in the Arctic. It doesn't matter.
Oh, look, good
it's
self...
Cold, it's cold down there too.
Good self-correct. I would not have picked up on that. I would have just moved straight on past it. But how do you say that, that Chris Scott's had it at least handed to him when he's been in the role for how many years?
That criticism's never really gone away. As, he won the premiership in 11 because he was given the list. Well, I don't really think that's fair. We've seen succession plans go completely belly up in the past, even with good sides. You look at Collingwood with Malthouse to Buckley. That didn't go very well at the start. Scott made it work. Positives for them, they can win anywhere. They're not a side I'm concerned about travelling. They've beaten most of the good sides, including that win over Collingwood. And they've also managed to add the best midfielder in the competition for almost nothing, seemingly. Yeah. And he probably is the best midfielder in the competition. I know he can be a bit up and down with disposal efficiency, but he just wins that ball and he's everywhere you need him to be. So, Meats for me, Liam, but I would accept an argument for exceeds.
Fair enough too. Let's move on to the 5th place Hawks, currently 10-5 as well. Slightly inferior percentage, 118.4. Was this the team you thought might be able to challenge the top 4 there, Jesse?
It is. I can see them being a top 4 side this season. And I know it's easy to say that coming from an 85-point win, but even setting that aside, I like what Sam Mitchell's got going because they would look like they were starting to be in a bit of trouble and they've won 3 on the bounce. And the trouble's gone. And no one's saying, the Hawks are in trouble again. They've had a tough draw this year. I'm going Meats. Some people have them sliding pretty alarmingly. Some getting, including as far as out of the 8. So I'm going Meats for the Hawks just. I can see them being top 4. There was some that were saying they weren't going to make the 8 this year.
Well,
I'm not one of those.
No.
Because they're in 5th. But they still could not make the 8 because there's only a game between 3rd and 9th, which is extraordinary. But I think the Hawks will be okay here. They've got a good list. They've gotten a lot of the tough games out of the system. That was a brutal run where they had, Geelong, Brisbane, Collingwood, seemingly back-to-back-to-back. It was a tough run for them. I think Gold Coast up in Darwin was one of those games as well. It was a brutal run. Mm-hmm. They've gotten that out of the system. Now, obviously, that brutal run will happen again in September, more than likely. Give them another crack, though. I think if they get to a prelim final, in terms of fear factor from an unknown, Hawks and Crows are the two that could really upset the apple cart in that second last week.
And if our boys the Freo Dockers, who are currently in 6th, also on 10 and 5, 110.4. If the Dockers don't happen to make the 8 or go on early and get knocked out, Hawks and Adelaide. Anyway, they're my teams. Let's move to the Dockers. Jesse, this is going to be an interesting one for us, I think, because obviously 6 at the moment, you'd be pretty happy with that. 6 on the trot at this stage. But are we exceeding the expectation set at the start of the season? I'd say the not meeting is out of the question. If you say not meeting, Jesse, I'm not going to take you seriously. So what are they doing? Are they exceeding or they're meeting?
They're meeting because we both had the top 4.
Yeah, true.
So I think you actually could make a legitimate argument. It'd actually be weird if you were saying exceeding. I think that is a weaker argument than it would be to not meeting. But I'm comfortable with meeting. To go from 4 and 5 to 10 and 5 is nice. Yep. We'll talk about this in the games review. I still have significant issues with a lot of the way that Fremantle is setting up structurally at the moment. But things are working right now. And there's an argument to be said for not changing things when things are working. You just look at them, though. They are the lowest team by a considerable distance in that top 8 for points for.
Yeah.
I don't think they've ever answered this question under Justin Lomua. They've only had 2 games worth in 5.5 years to prove they can answer it in finals. And really, they only did that for one half of one of those games they could score in a final. So, big question marks. And I think if we do this, does not meet, meets, exceeds for the Dockers come the end of the season, there'll be a really interesting grade because even a bad finals loss maybe it does not meet. But for now, they're meeting. The draw's very up and down, though. They're probably one of the big teams in danger of dropping out of the 8. There's probably 3 teams fighting for 2 spots. Fremantle are one of those.
Yeah, it's a bit of a rough run home, which is why that win on the weekend was so important for them. I can hear a lot of our Freo fans, our Freo faithful, shaking their fist at you, Jesse, because they're like, we're the youngest team in the competition. We're exceeding expectations. We're doing so much better than what we should be.
No.
I love that. This is what I love about you, Jesse. When you don't disagree. No.
I mean, everyone's entitled to their opinion.
That's true.
I'll just tell you what's wrong. If it isn't, I can back it up with data. And unfortunately, with Fremantle, I'd love to be wrong here. I don't sit there, my arms crossed when we're winning, so what am I going to rage bait this week? I actually would prefer to be good. Alas, that's not really been the case. But Liam, the Dogs, they're in 7th. Also in the same bracket as Fremantle in terms of need to win, but with one less game won so far.
Yeah, it's an interesting one for the Bulldogs because obviously we wax lyrical every week about how good the Dogs are, and we've always said that their position on the ladder doesn't really kind of match how good that team actually is. And now that we're starting to get some of those players back, your Sam Darcy's, your Bontempelli's back, I think we're starting to really see exactly how good they can be. So it's an interesting one to grade this because they had a really rough run in the middle there with injuries. If they had those, I think we could see them push to exceeding. But what do you reckon, Jesse?
I'm going to go with mates.
Okay.
With a team like the Dogs that have gotten that flat track bullies tag this year, and to an extent, I do understand that tag because they have beaten up on a lot of bad sides and struggled against some good ones. But when it comes to flat track bullies, especially when they've had up and down injuries and form to key players throughout the season, you trust that as long as they're winning those games, they will be fine. Dogs are not one of the 3 teams fighting for 2 spots, in my opinion. I think they will be okay.
Yeah.
I think they will be 6th. I think they will be a horrific prospect for 7th in an elimination final. Yeah, and an even 100%. Worse one for a side coming off a loss in a qualifying final to have to go and play that. You would want to be an interstate team having that semi-final against the Dogs because if it's Geelong or a Collingwood or a Hawthorn, I have to go play the Dogs who have just had a win in an elimination final and have momentum up. That's not where I want to be.
So there's nothing writing them out of being a top 4 side just yet either.
No, there isn't. I do think the other sides are stronger though. I think Hawthorn, the Crows, the Lions right now, the Cats obviously in there too. I think they're probably slightly stronger. Okay. But the Dogs do have a very healthy percentage that does allow them to compete for that top 4 rank. They could steal 4th.
They could steal 4th. Even worse for the competition. They could do it again, but Bulldogs, 2016 repeated, outside the 8, away you go. Outside the 8, you can't win finals from there. Outside the 4. Outside the 4. Let's move on to one of the other teams I'm sure you're talking about in those 3 that are fighting for that 8th spot, and that is the Gold Coast Suns. Back in the 8 after a much-needed win on the weekend. They are 9-5, not forgetting that cheeky little game in hand they've got just dangling there like a carrot. Could you imagine, Jesse, end of the season, all they need to do is win that last game against Essendon. No one else can do anything. They just have to watch.
That's a Jackson Pryor legacy game. Look, I sort of got it right about Geelong at the start of the season. I've gotten it wrong about Gold Coast so far. So I'm happy to go Exceeds here. You may say Meat Slim. I have to go Exceeds because I was really cold on them coming in. I was a bit fatigued with are they going to be good this year? And then they're not. So I probably got that a bit wrong. They've been very good. They've had that patchy form, but they've come out of it with a win against a side that has been disappointing. I still give that weight, though, because they need to beat these teams.
Yeah.
And when you're stuck in the mud, you've lost 3 in a row, sometimes you just need that little jump start to get out of that. They got that by beating Melbourne on the weekend. That's a big tick for them. Their list is threatening, and they can hurt you. Unlike a couple of teams in this bracket, I think the Suns have the most pain factor and upside against both clubs above them, but also below them. But they're probably, the other side of that coin is probably more susceptible to slipping up in this race for the top 8. But in saying that, if Harbour can just get the heebie-jeebies out of them and make sure they're firing when they need to be, I do lean towards the Suns being one of those 2 teams getting the 3 spots. But it's hard to say because, honestly, Fremantle, the Suns, and the team we'll talk about next all seem to be at about the same level. But the Suns have been my biggest surprise, I guess, out of those 3 so far.
Love to see it. I'd say they're exceeding as well, Jesse, just to go to your initial point. Yeah, I mean, it's the Suns. Anytime they're anywhere in the finals contention or finals picture, they're exceeding expectations. Let's move on to the GWS Giants, currently 9th, not also 9th, but they're 9-6. 107.6 is their percentage. Just dipping out again. In and out, these guys go. Interesting season for the Giants, though. They've kind of been a bit of a mixed bag from top to bottom. Your thoughts, Jesse, on the Giants?
I think it's fair to say it does not meet the Giants. They may play finals this year. It'll be from somewhere from 5th to 8th. They may do that. But this is a team that a lot of people have at the top of the ladder. And right now, their inability to show any form of consistency is holding them back. Now, they should be able to... They've got 4 out of the last 5. That's a positive. They play West Coast this week. They should be able to go and convert that. That gives them a good platform. And that is very, very important for them. But the teams above them this week also play teams they should be beating. So you get into this position now when you're the one on the outside looking in with your inferior percentage of saying, oh no, we're doing what we need to do, but the sides above us are also doing that. So they're in the hot seat right now, the Giants. The pressure's more on them, in my view, than it is on the Suns, the Dockers, and I'll throw the Bulldogs in as well. Because right now, they need to execute their game plans. The Giants need to execute their game plans and wait for results to go their way. That's not a nice position to be in. You'd always rather be on the inside looking out than the outside looking in.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to agree with you there. It does not meet. I think I had them minor premiers this year.
I think I did too.
Yeah, one of us did. But yeah, bit of a shame, but we'll see where they finish up the year. Jesse, let's move on to the Power, currently sitting in 10th. Had a bit of a resurgence the last few weeks, haven't they? 7-8 with 88.6%. Does not meet, right?
Liam, you know when you cut a tentacle off, and we see a video of someone cutting a tentacle off like an octopus, which you shouldn't do, by the way. But you see it, and it just flops around for a bit, and it's still alive, but it's actually not. That's 10th down. And Port Adelaide in this bracket does not meet expectations. They have been a demonstrable flop in season 2025. This list is a top 4 list, in my view. I really like this Port Adelaide list. And they've actually finally answered the question of, is Mitch Georgiades good? The answer to that question now is mostly, which is better than sometimes, which is what it has been for the last 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And they're 10th. That is a disaster. That is a disaster for Port Adelaide. They've got issues at board level at the moment. They've got issues with the succession plan. Are they going to execute it? I mean, Ken's been saying for the longest time he'll step aside when Port are outside contending. I mean, they've been outside contending for a month and he's still there. I don't care that he's moved to the back row. They're not contending. I mean, not only is it 2 whole wins and a massive amount of percentage away from the top 8, but in terms of quality and performance on field, you're talking Mercury to Pluto at the moment in this chasm, and we've been widening that chasm week to week.
Yeah.
But you really saw it on Thursday night. I think when Port got a hold of a bad side, a really bad side, they beat them up. But Port are going to play Brisbane this week. I think, in turn, they'll get beaten up. And we'll really start to see that chasm in real life, in practice. Between 9th and 10th.
In situ.
Yes, very Latin of you. What do you about you, Lemmy? Are you also with me on clearly does not meet?
Oh, the Power haven't met expectations whatsoever. Another team that we expected to both go to the top. I think the succession plan this year has been a disaster, like you said, mainly because the players don't seem to have that synchronicity that they need within that list because they don't know what's going on.
I agree.
And Josh Carr moving forward into the front of the box. He's still got the L plates on, though. That's the problem. He's still got the driving instructor in the back telling him what to do. And I think until Ken's just kind of cut that umbilical cord and gone, they haven't met expectations by a long shout. Let's move on to the next team. Your favorite, Jesse, the Carlton Blues, 11th, 6-9, 100.4%. It's a pretty good percentage. Over 100 for a 6-9 team.
You say my favorite. The fans deserve better than this. I mean,
they do.
I jump on teams that are demonstrably underperforming, and I'll tell it how it is. Carlton, I would say, are the biggest does not meters this season. You can argue with me about another team, which we'll come to in a second. For me, Carlton are the biggest does not meets. They have been a colossal failure in 2025. They can't get players on the field. That's not a great start. They can't score. That's a problem. They can't defend. That's actually probably worse. The fan base is at revolt stage to the point where I actually think maybe you're probably looking at sacking a coach. And I don't think Voss will coach in 2026. I think you can call that right now. I don't think Voss will be at the club in 2026. Whether that's fair or not is probably a topic for another deep dive in itself. For the record, I'm somewhat leaning no to that. But we're at the point now where that position is untenable. And two things can be true. He could be not the right coach for the club, but also a good coach. And I think that is the situation that Voss is stuck in a more clear-cut way than a guy like Teague or Bolton or even Ratton were in. I think that's just the case. I think Voss is a better coach than all of them. But, the amount of passengers on this list, it is terrifying looking at Carlton's top 6 players, their money they'd be on, and then the drop down from that. I honestly can see this being a bottom 4 side in 2027.
Wow.
This has real potential to just completely collapse for me. I'm terrified for Carlton going into expansion draft years. This is a terrifying prospect for Carlton because they went through this not long ago with the Gold Coast and GWS drafts when they were okay, and then they very quickly collapsed while GWS was still getting draft picks, and it was a disaster. That's a real possibility to happen here. Yeah,
scary times for Blues fans, unfortunately. Let's move on to the Swans. In 12th spot, also 6-9 with 92.1%. Last year's grand finalists have fallen right off the cliff. I think you expected a bit of a dip.
I mean, I have to give these guys does not meet, and I still had them missing the finals because that's how poor they've been on field. And they get it does not meet just purely because I'm offended at how bad they've been on the field this year. It's been awful. And, you talk about Voss maybe being harshly judged. I think there needs to be more scrutiny on Dean Cox.
Yeah.
Because this has just gone completely wrong. And
no leeway for a first-year coach? You reckon just get him out and start again?
I think sometimes you need to be in a realistic situation where being ruthless isn't a bad thing in a high-performance environment. That may be harsh on Dean Cox, and I'm happy to accept that as a harsh take. But ultimately, Sydney have been a very successful club for the last 20 years. Really, you could extrapolate that across 150, given they're one of the foundation clubs. But especially in the last 20 years, they've been a very successful club. They've got key marketability as a big city destination. You can't flounder this. And they're not getting any better, I don't think, as the season's going on. I know there was that weird flicker of hope that people thought was going to happen with them, but they're just not a good side.
Yeah. I'll be interested to see how they obviously those injured players that were the core of all the excuses for the longest time this year are starting to come back, those injured players. So the excuses are drying up. So we'll see how they fare for the rest of the year. I'd say probably 12th is about as high as they're going to get, Jesse, you reckon?
I'd say so.
All right, let's move on to 13th. They're Bombers, 13th, 6-8. That extra game in hand, which is going to be really handy for them. 77.5%, really bad percentage as well. I'm not too sure about the Bombers because I didn't think they were going to have an overly great season to start the year off, but here they are sitting in 13th and not threatening at all.
Meeting expectations for me. I think I had the bottom 4, but I'll take bottom 6 as a general bracket for that, so that's right. I had them being, unable to score. They're the second lowest scoring team in the competition. There's no real signs of improvement from key players. That's maybe you're concerned about not meeting expectations. Guys like Hobbs, Perkins, Cox, these guys aren't kicking on, and they're entering those prime years. That's a real worry for the Bombers. If you haven't seen our draft video about where the Bombers went wrong in recent years, go and look at that on YouTube. It's really good. But they are not. And that's just the long and the short of it. They need to have a real think about the list management in the offseason and decide, do we go again and try to do a big free agency deal, big trade deal, get some star powers in and try and build around a guy like Caldwell? That's an option. Or do you go back to the draft? They've got 2 first-round picks this year. Good opportunity to regenerate the list, but right now they're just in purgatory.
Which is where we expected them to be. Let's move on to 14th, the Demons. 5-10, 86.7% coming into round 17. Jesse, probably about right?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with this. They've had a really bad start to the season, then they found form, and now they're bad again. And that's probably about where I thought Melbourne would be, more bad than good, and that's where we're at.
Yeah, pretty much it, isn't it? So much more to say about the D's. Should we just move on, Jesse? Because that's probably the most succinct team on the list. The Saints currently in 15th, also 5-10, 86.2%.
This is hard because as far as 15 play size go, I said this last week, they're actually pretty good. I'm going to go mates. I'm going to be nice and give them mates. Probably because I'm going to eviscerate them in the games review. I'm going to say mates. Their form has been dreadful. Yeah. I think they've won one game since they blew out Fremantle in about round 6. That's horrific. But they're getting games into the kids, and they're clearly persisting with that too. They've had that weird moment where they had 1 week of a bunch of veterans. But now guys like Taru are getting in the team. I do think the Saints are going to be okay on the condition they re-signed Wangan Miller. That is conditional on that.
On the condition that anyone else wants to actually come and play for them, apparently.
I do think they'll rise, though. I don't think they'll finish in 15. I think you might say 13th for Security by the end of the season. I think they're a riser.
Yeah, fair shout. Nearly at the tail end, Jesse. We're at the tail end. The Kangas in 16th, 4-10, and that cheeky draw against the reigning premiers. 78.5% is their percentage. There was parts of this season where I was like, here we go. Kangas are up and about. They're starting to show some good signs. And then, I don't know, kind of off a cliff again for peaks and troughs, which you can expect from these lower ranked teams. But I don't know with the Kangas. It's like 1 week to the next. What are they doing?
Yeah,
probably about meets expectations, though, right?
I'm going to say meets. If they had to put in a really competitive show, as in like a 1-2 goal game against Hawthorn, I might have been swung to exceeds. But I was really thinking this was going to be a better year for North, and to a degree that's been true. But we're still a bit of a way off here, I'm afraid, and I think meets is about right.
Yeah. Meets is about right. Second last, the Tigers, 17th, 3-12, 64.8. What do you say about the young Tigers, Jesse? What do you say about them? Nothing too mean, I hope. They're still young.
No, I can go meets here. They've been fun to watch at times.
Yeah.
But they're paralysed in some games, and they just become a feast for the opposition, unfortunately. And look, this was expected to a degree. And I think, honestly, if you made an argument to me saying, no, they absolutely should be exceeds, I would probably give that to you, because they have shown probably a bit more than a lot of people had them going in at the start of the season, and they're not last. But I think meets is about right. I think if we had said they win 3 or 4 games, we'd say, yeah, that sounds about right. They've won 3 with a third of the season still to go. I'm not sure if they're going to win a 4th. They've got West Coast still to come, but they need to win a game too, because they've only won the 1.
Have they?
Yes.
The Eagles, last place, 1-14, 1 win, 14 losses, 65.2%. Geez, they're in a bit of strife, aren't they?
Yeah, I have to go does not meet here, because you can't go through 15 games of a season and win 1 game and be meeting expectations. This is 1996 Fitzroy levels. They're not getting flogged as much, and that is worth qualifying. The floggings have stopped by and large for West Coast, and you can see improvement there on the field.
Yeah, you can.
But they're not converting on-field improvement into results right now, and unfortunately, that still looks like it's a bit of a way off. I think the Fox supercomputer had them winning 2.95 games this season from now, so we'll call that 3, because that's it is 3. I mean, I got Richmond in there, but can they reliably beat another side? I mean, they beat St Kilda quite comfortably in the end at Optus, which was great for the West Coast fans, because otherwise you're staring at an awful losing streak. But now you're getting 2 losing streaks sandwiching a win. It's not a very tasty sandwich.
It's proverbial shit sandwich, Jesse.
That it is.
Everyone's favourite.
That concludes our performance review of the season. Do you agree with our assessment of your club? Drop a comment below if you're on YouTube or on our preferred podcasting platforms. You can also send us a DM with your praise or abuse, depending on your take on our take on your club.
That's right, Jesse. That's right. No, it's always interesting to go into them, but let us know your thoughts down below.